Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the only first listen new music review show hosted by a French professor sitting on his floor. Today I'm going to be reviewing an album by GoGo Penguin. It's a self-titled album, therefore the title is GoGo Penguin, and it is a jazz album. And this is going to prompt me to give myself a chance to answer a question that I've been asked many, many times. This is the first time I've reviewed anything that you could consider to be jazz, and the question that I feel comes up all the time in my life as a musician and person who loves music is, do you like jazz? Do you like jazz? That's a question I feel like I am asked very often. And my answer has usually been, not really, a little bit. And I kind of want to go into that answer. Like, when I say, not really, what is it that keeps me from loving jazz? Now, initially, I would say that it's the gatekeepers who like jazz music, that everyone's very possessive and they always are trying to get one more up on you. And, oh, you don't know, this person played with that person, and this isn't hard bop, this is soft bop, and this is post-fusion, Colombian fusion, pre-fusion. All that stuff is the reason that I told myself I didn't like jazz. It was that annoying voice I did, do you like jazz, that I personified as being the description of jazz music. But that's a cop-out, that's a sellout. Instead, what are the reasons that I don't like jazz? Two of my favorite words, ignorance and shame. That's the reason I don't like jazz. The ignorance speaks for itself. Jazz is such a profoundly complicated form of music, played at such a high level, and often at such a level of abstraction that I simply don't understand it. I study French. I am a French professor. I don't understand the Tour de France at all. Bicycle racing makes no sense to me at all. I have a friend, good friend, lives in Santa Barbara. He's like a semi-professional bicyclist, I don't know what. And he was trying to explain it to me. He talked to me about it for like an hour, explaining to me like the ways that it's interesting and why he cares. And at the end of it, I came to this realization. I don't get it. I don't understand professional bicycle racing. But I understand there's something that I don't get. So often with jazz music, the level at which it's played indicates to me that there's something I don't get. I feel similar about Western art music, what we call classical music, where it feels like when you just listen to pop music, like I do, pop or rap or hip hop or indie rock, whatever, country, like you're living on a lake, and you can sort of understand a lake, and you can understand the depth of the lake, and you can appreciate it, and it's fresh water, and you know the birds, and you know the fish, and everything. Whereas jazz and classical often feels like an ocean, where I just will never get to the depths of it. So instead of just sort of saying, well, I like it and I'm going to try to swim, I'm like, there's sharks in there. I can't swim in the ocean. Is this too many metaphors in 3 minutes? It might be. So that's the ignorance part. And I'm going to get to the shame soon. Before I get to that, I want to talk about this specific album and this specific band, GoGo Penguin. They are a trio from Manchester, and the best way to describe it is it's jazz played by people who like techno, played by people who have listened to and appreciated bands like Aphex Twin, or some of the more avant-garde parts of Radiohead, and listen to the way that rhythm is played with, that arpeggios are used, and instead of having them being made on the computer, they're being made by human hands. Bass, drum, piano. That's it. It is an amazing feat what they're able to do. The rhythms that they create, they're able to even trigger rhythms and set them over again just like you would on a computer. But despite that imitation of a computer at times, it's always in a great groove. It's got great funk to it. It's got a great feel to it. And it is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful album. Now, how do I even know about them? Why am I reviewing GoGo Penguin? You see, I live in Rochester, New York, or a suburb of Rochester, New York. And every year we have a jazz festival. And me not liking jazz is further evidence of my own idiocy. It would be like if I lived in Coachella and decided that I don't love indie music. I know Coachella's not a town, but you get my point. It'd be like if I lived in Sundance, Colorado, and was like, I don't like independent film. I also know that's not a city. I know all these things. It's ridiculous that I live in this city that has a great international jazz festival, a great jazz record shop, a great jazz community, and yet I don't dip my toes in that ocean at all. In the 10 years that I have lived in Rochester, our most famous festivals are the Lilac Festival, never been, and the Jazz Festival. I have seen one band once. I went on a date, wonderful date, and saw GoGo Penguin. This band absolutely blew my mind. It was in a little church. You know, when you go to a concert and you see something and you just go, these guys are going to be this is the Beatles. I can't believe how good this is. This band is going to be so big. How are they not so big already? I saw this and I was so excited. You don't even understand what this piano player is doing, okay? He plays these arpeggiated chords, while also playing chords with his other hand. And the entire time I was watching the concert, I was looking around trying to find the tape deck. How are they creating both of these rhythms at once? It was so unbelievable. And this album, GoGo Penguin by GoGo Penguin, is just recorded live. You will swear there are overdubs. No human being can be this accomplished at counterpoint in rhythm and melody, and here it is. It is an unbelievable feat. The bass player, amazing bass player, able to keep everything together, able to play great notes, a stand-up bass the entire time, uses the bow at the right time, exactly right, totally tasteful all the time. And then we get to the drummer. Listen, I am, as I've spoken several times, a mediocre multi-instrumentalist. I play many instruments poorly. The instrument I play the best, poorly, is the drums. I love good drumming. GoGo Penguin, and this comes through on the album, but it really comes through live. This was the second best performance I have ever seen of drums in my life. It was an absolute tour de force. The precision that this guy plays with is unbelievable. But it's not just the precision, it's the beats that he makes, it's the choices that he makes. Often drummers, when they're this good, do too much. He never does too much. He always does just the right amount. And the things he's asked to do, the patterns that he has to create in his head, the things he has to keep straight, honestly, the entire time I was in this little church in Rochester, New York, I was looking around being like, this can't actually be live music. It really is. I promised you I would talk about my shame. Well, we'll get there right now. You see, this was the second best performance I've ever seen of drumming. The first best performance of drumming I've ever seen was back in the suburb of Boston where I grew up, Belmont, Massachusetts. We had a thing called Arts Week, where different artists, the whole week was dedicated to art and music, and it's a beautiful tradition I have there. And one day, a drummer came in. His name was Alan Dawson. Now, all of you jazz heads, who are the reason I don't like jazz, who go, do you like jazz? When I said Alan Dawson, they just went, oh, wow. The Alan Dawson. Alan Dawson, okay, everyone's heard of Max Roach, everyone's heard of Art Blakey, whatever, but Alan Dawson is the jazz fans' drummer. He played with Dave Brubeck, he played with other groups, and he played a drum solo and gave a demonstration for us at Belmont High in 1994, I don't know what, and I have never been more blown away by drums in my life. I was so taken. Me, the rock and roll drummer, it was my band. I went up afterwards and I shook his hand. I said, I can't believe it. I just can't believe how good this is. I want to play like you. Will you train me? Will you teach me? Alan Dawson. I promise I won't call you Andre Dawson like the outfielder. Alan Dawson, will you teach me how to play drums? He's like, well, I don't really, but I convinced him. So I drove out to his house. It was in Wellesley or something like that, a different suburb of Boston. Beautiful house. If you could imagine a mid-century dream, that's what his house was like. And I sat down and he started trying to get me to read music. I was like, no, I just want to do the He's trying to get me to play, figure out how jazz works. Like he's trying to chart a song for me. I think it was like Take the A Train or whatever, you know, and I'm like, this isn't what I want to do. And I come back the next week and I hadn't practiced. And he said, you have to practice. I had another lesson. Came back the third week, I hadn't practiced. He fired me. He didn't need my money. He didn't need my money. What? He is Alan Dawson. I am some schmuck from Belmont. I just wanted to be able to play jazz drums without doing the work. I tell this story because I think it's very informative, not just on a personal level, right, as to my own psychology. Whenever I teach French, often people want to learn French, but they don't want to learn it, Like, I'm sorry, you just have to learn the conjugations. There's nothing I can do. Like, I'm so happy that you have the passion, but until you learn the conjugations, you're not going to do it. I know what it is to be excellent at something, and I know what it is to be so lazy and incapable of achieving it. So I think, to a certain degree, jazz's place in our world is informed by the ignorance, but also the shame that musicians often feel, and people who listen to music, that they're just not good enough for what they're hearing. Of course, we're not good enough for Bob Dylan either, but there's something about it that seems that we're able to connect to it, that we're able to attach to it. So my job, and your job, if you feel the same way I do, is to try more. I try more. I go down to the bop shop in Rochester and I say, help me get jazz music. I like Haitian Fight Song by Mingus. What should I listen to? So what's nice about this, about GoGo Penguin, is it's new jazz, and it's this jazz that I can actually attach myself to. Because it uses that framework or that connection to electronic music, it sounds somewhat similar. And each instrument is so important and works so well. Really, the piano is the heart of the whole thing. It was funny because after the show, my girlfriend went up, and she's a classically trained pianist, and she was just like, I know he's classically trained. I've got to ask him. I've just got to ask him if he's classically trained. And she asked, like, oh yeah. Like, you can tell that even though he's playing like these kind of like far out things, his mastery is so complete. There's the whole, 10,000 hour thing. Each one of these musicians feels like a 30,000 hour type thing. It's just amazing. And it really is the rhythms that he does that I just don't believe it. I don't believe him. There has to be another piano player somewhere else in the building, but there's not. Bass, I think if you listen to a song like the last song, Don't Go, is where you get the bass best displayed. If I had one argument against this album, is you gotta crank the bass up a little bit, because the piano is played very loud, there's often a lot of sustain, and the drumming is so punchy, but the bass doesn't always come up. Like when I listened to it, I had to actually turn up the bass setting, which I don't usually like to do. But if you listen to a song like Don't Go, you'll hear how good he is, and again, just how tasteful the whole band is. I don't think I need to talk about the drummer anymore. I will say that I don't think there's a single song on this album that's in 4/4. I imagine that when these guys count to 10, they just skip 4 because they don't know how to do it. Like 1, 2, 3, 7/8, 4, 5, anyways. And they do a lot of time signature changes, but it's never in that laborious way. And that's why I keep coming back to this concept of tasteful. They're a tasteful band that knows how to make music that's complicated but listenable. I'm gonna play you just not even my favorite song, Totem. It's actually not, I sort of don't like it that much on the album. I like it, but it's at the bottom of my classification. But this is the best example of how their groove all comes together. So have a little listen here to Totem. So that doesn't really give you that much of an understanding of it, but I can't help you on that. You really have to listen to it. And one more thing. I was listening to this album with my family. I was driving around in the car and listening to it. I was like, do you like it? Yeah. But we all sort of agreed it's all kind of samey. It all kind of sounds the same after a while. And I realized that's the other reason that I don't like jazz or classical music. It's because I am, like many people, ignorant. And because I'm ignorant, it all starts to sound like background music. Do you understand how messed up it is that when people want to listen to background music that they can tune out, the music forms they go to are the most complicated music in existence, classical and jazz? What is going on in our head? Oh, there's no words? So just because there's no words, it means you can listen to Bach or Coltrane and just go, yeah, just put it on the back and I don't have to listen. I don't have to pay attention to what's going on here. This is only musicianship at its highest possible level. So what I did was I listened to the album again this morning on headphones and in my car, and I just listened to each song, and each song is amazing and interesting. And yes, the atmosphere is consistent all the way through, with the piano and the drums and the bass, but each song has something to it. Like the track Open. So many things are happening in this track. The drummer, I don't know how he's playing it. If you're a drummer, just listen to the track Open and just go, I'm sorry, man. Like, send this guy a letter. Like, get well soon. I don't, because he has all these different patterns that he's doing. He's just playing it, but it goes so well together. You could put it in the background if you wanted to, or you can listen to it, and it's like a painting, right? Like, you can just have a painting on in the background, or you can really look at it and see what makes it amazing. And it's just an amazing, amazing track. What is the drummer doing? I don't know how they do. And then when you see it in concert, for like an hour and a half of playing this, how do you remember every single thing? The first sort of real track on the album, the opening track, is kind of like a ambient sound thing. Atomized. It's cool because it ends with this sort of real bravado. And they did this more on their earlier albums that I've heard, where like they kind of show off. So like they stop and go back. They kind of do the thing like cut out and then start again. But it does a thing that is the reason that it reminds me of electronic music. Like DJ Shadow even, like where they just play with rhythms and you get the sense that the rhythms are just nothing. They can just start like they can do whatever they want with it. Much better than I just did it. But it's completely easy for them as a trio, not just as a single person. Absolutely astounding. A track like Signal in the Noise is a great example of the emotion they're able to put into their music. Again, when you listen more carefully, you get so much more out of it. It has this great soaring quality, and you see the dynamics of the group. Again, it's astounding that there's just 3 members here because their sound is so full. F Major Pixie is a good example of how the drummer has taste, because the whole time, I've listened to a lot of great drummers, and often you sort of want this kind of like this double hi-hat thing, like like little extra hi-hat notes, and they're coming, but he saves them for the right time, and he brings them in, and he lets the arpeggio of the piano go a little bit longer, and the rhythms just get so in, and just as the arpeggios go and the drums go, like you find yourself and your brain like twisted into the rhythms that they're making. Like this is how you feel when you're listening to their music. You're just like, how do I'm in this rhythm. This is my daughter's penguin, by the way. She said I could rename it GoGo. So there's GoGo Penguin. There he is. So it's a really great example of how they're able to do that. And he uses the kind of double hi-hat thing, especially when it's building to something. And he's able to build something in the song that is spectacular. It really is. Especially at the end of this track. It's not my favorite track, but it's one of them. The track Cora is how precise. It shows how precision can also be in a flow. And this is another thing that when people say, do you like jazz? Like I used to really like I still love Hank Williams. And Hank Williams used to fire musicians if they were too good, if they were too talented. And I used to think that was great. That was before, I formed a very strong relationship with somebody who's a classically trained musician who's so tired of hearing that stuff. Because being mediocre, like I am at a lot of instruments, doesn't make you good, doesn't make you bad. Being great, being a virtuoso, doesn't make you good, doesn't make you bad. It's virtuosos like this that allow you to see the true value of all that practice. And a song like Cora, how these complicated, non-standard rhythms, every single note sounds unexpected. Every single beat sounds unexpected. But the whole time, you're not in there in some kind of prog rock, orgasm of just like, now I went to 17.8 to 19.2 and then 44.7. No, you can actually just listen. Also kind of nice because in this track they use like a not just a pure piano sound, which helps to break up some of that perceived monotony, which isn't there. It's just a product of my ignorance. And that has the best jam at the end. The best reason to see them in concert is when they kind of let themselves go, not really even improvise, but just like let the song kind of like build to something, and you just get psyched. You just get really psyched. Embers, they're able to slow it down, and really when they slow it down like that and on Don't Go, they allow the bass to come out. And then the stamp of the album, the best track, I'm gonna put a link in the description, called To the Nth. And it has this breakdown that's just bass and drums that is so unbelievably badass. The thing about GoGo Penguin is I feel like at any point, some great film director is going to pick them and make a great movie and use them as a soundtrack. And then all of a sudden, everybody will know GoGo Penguin. Or, I don't know. I mean, David Bowie's dead. But David Bowie's last album, he took a jazz group and lifted them out. I feel like somebody could find them and lift them out. I feel like Radiohead could tour with them because they're just so good and they're so interesting. All of a sudden, everybody would know them. And it's moments like this on this track, which I could even see being sampled in a hip-hop song, you know? That like, the fact that they're not household names, the fact that this video will probably get like 70 views, is part of the problem. If this jazz doesn't make it, yikes, because this is really accessible, really awesome jazz. Okay, well then, that's my review of GoGo Penguin. I apologize to all of the people who love jazz, who I may have insulted. I hope you take my humility for what it is, which is genuine. Okay, until next time, for GoGo Penguin, there's the camera.